Before a single Allied soldier stepped onto the beaches of Normandy, thousands of ground crews across England were handed paintbrushes and given a bizarre, top-secret order that seemed completely suicidal. Every aircraft on every base across England was to be stripped of its camouflage and repainted that very night. No one was allowed to leave the airfields, and no one was permitted to ask questions. By dawn, more than 11,000 aircraft were covered in massive, glaring black and white stripes. To anyone looking at the flight lines, the move looked insane. Why mark your own planes so boldly and visibly right before the most dangerous military operation in history? Wouldn't that just make them perfect targets for German gunners? The answer traces back to a hidden disaster from the previous year. A British fighter that almost got every pilot who flew it killed by his own side, and a 22-year-old ace named Bud Anderson, who walked out to his P-51 Mustang in the dark and couldn't believe what he was looking at. This is the real story of the invasion stripes.
You're watching World War II Air Command.
To understand why the Allies did something so counterintuitive, you have to go back a full year before D-Day to the invasion of Sicily. On the night of July 11, 1943, 144 C-47 transports carrying paratroopers of the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment lifted off from Tunisia and turned north toward the Sicilian coast. Earlier that night, German bombers had hit the Allied fleet offshore, and every gun crew on every ship was already at battle stations. When the C-47s appeared on the horizon, a single nervous gunner opened fire. Within seconds, every Allied gun on every ship and shore battery joined in. 23 transports went down. 81 American paratroopers were killed, torn apart by their own side. General Matthew Ridgway watched from a hillside as his own men's planes fell out of the sky. In the dark, gunners simply could not separate a C-47 from German Junkers bombers. It was a failure of recognition, and Normandy was about to put more aircraft in one sky than any operation in history. If this wasn't solved before June 6, 1944, Sicily would look like a footnote. What makes this story remarkable is that the Allies had already solved this problem once, before Sicily ever happened. The Hawker Typhoon entered RAF service in 1941. Built to catch the Focke-Wulf FW-190s terrorizing the Channel coast. The trouble was, from certain angles, the Typhoon looked enough like the FW-190 to get its own pilots killed. On June 1, 1942, 2 Typhoons were shot down over the Channel by Canadian Spitfire pilots convinced they were chasing the enemy. It happened again. 4 Typhoons were lost to friendly fire in a matter of months. The RAF's fix was blunt. Wide black and white bands painted on the underside of the wings, a pattern with no equivalent in the Luftwaffe. The friendly fire incidents dropped sharply. The stripes worked. The lesson just didn't travel far enough to save the men over Sicily a year later. By the spring of 1944, planners had Sicily and the Typhoon sitting on the same desk. They had proof of the problem and proof of the fix. Now, they needed to apply it at a scale nobody had ever attempted without the Germans catching on. If the Luftwaffe learned what was coming, they could paint their own planes the same way and turn the whole system against itself. Air Chief Marshal Sir Trafford Leigh-Mallory approved the plan on May 17, 1944. Orders didn't reach the squadrons until June 3rd and 4th. By then, every airfield in England was locked down, completely cutting off phone calls, letters, and physical travel. The design was simple: 3 white and 2 black bands, 18 to 24 inches wide depending on the aircraft, wrapped around the fuselage and both wings. The rule handed to gunners was just as simple. If it doesn't have stripes, shoot it down. Ground crews painted through the night with brushes, rollers, whatever was on hand. The lines were freehand and uneven, nothing like the clean stripes you see in museums today. The secret held. The Germans never found out. Captain Clarence Bud Anderson flew a P-51B Mustang named Old Crow with the 357th Fighter Group out of RAF Leiston. On June 4th, he was told the Mustangs were grounded, no reason given. While he slept that night, his crew chief painted Old Crow. He walked out to the flight line the next morning and stopped cold. He later said he simply couldn't believe how big the stripes were. On the evening of June 5th, Anderson sat in the briefing room as his squadron commander handed out patrol sectors over Normandy. He flew what he called the longest mission of his life early on June 6th, came home, and was asleep before he hit the pillow. 2 hours later, someone woke him up. There was another mission on that day. Bud Anderson flew twice on D-Day. The Allies expected a brutal fight for the sky over Normandy. That was the entire point of the stripes, since over 11,000 aircraft, flying more than 14,000 sorties in a single day, would overwhelm any electronic identification system. Only 3 German aircraft overflew the beaches on D-Day. Friendly fire incidents still happened here and there, but the catastrophic scale everyone feared never came. A month later, the upper surface stripes were ordered removed, since they now made Allied planes easy to spot from the ground. By the end of 1944, they were gone entirely. The idea outlived the paint job. Stripes returned for Market Garden, then resurfaced as yellow panels in Korea and yellow and black bands during the Suez Crisis. So why mark your own plane so visibly before the most dangerous operation in history? The move wasn't a flash of genius. It came from a brutal lesson learned in blood over Sicily, finally pushed all the way to the top of Allied command. When 11,000 aircraft share one sky and the technology fails, you fall back on what human eyes can actually see. Bud Anderson flew 116 missions in Old Crow without ever taking a hit. He lived to be 102. The stripes he stared at that morning were gone before Christmas. For one summer, they may have been the most important coat of paint applied anywhere in the entire war. Fight smart, fly home.